Good evening. My name is Indrajit Gupta, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our second episode of talking about my generation, or TAMG, as we like to call it. Thank you all for the wonderful feedback and constructive criticism that you've given us. For us, it was simply amazing to see the level of involvement on the live show and also on the Slack channel, both before and after the first episode. Maybe that tells us that this concept of a intergenerational chat and a cross-cultural one may have struck a chord. That's not surprising, given that the pandemic has brought about so much change, both in our lives and also on the work front. As a team, we've really enjoyed curating this weekly show, and the amazing audience interactivity has, in fact, if anything else, redoubled our commitment to work with our special guests to bring you nothing less than a great experience. And now I'd like to invite our special guests, Damodar and Harsh Mal. Hi, Damodar.
How are you? Hi, IG. Good to see you.
How's your PS4 practice progressing?
Well, stumbling, but getting along, and you will hear more of it, IG.
Okay, I'm sure we will. Hi, Harsh. Welcome back.
Hi, IG. Thanks.
Yeah, so have you managed to get rid of savories that you were kind of devouring, Little Hearts and Oreo you spoke about in the first episode?
Yes, a lot sooner than I expected to, so I'm going to have to replenish my stock soon.
Okay, great. Harsh, you had kind of offered us a sneak peek of what you and Damodar plan to chat about towards the end of our first episode, and you also wrote a terrific piece supported by an audiogram by Damodar that was published on Founding Fuel earlier this week. And I'll let you kind of tell us a little more about that. But before I do that, I have some important news to share right at the end of this show. So folks, just stay tuned for that. So without much ado, over to you, Harsh. Take it away.
Thanks, IG. Thanks for that introduction. And a big thank you to our audience for your participation in the first episode of Talking About My Generation. I have to say your questions and comments, both here on Facebook and on our Slack channel, really brought the discussion alive. So while the going is good, I want to get into our topic for today, which is the post-COVID workplace and how to adapt to it. Now, Papa, if you recall, in the early days of the lockdown, there was a real buzz and excitement around working from home, and some of that has changed. So I have a question for you. Before this year, before March in the year 2020, how often in your career did you work from home?
In a simple one word, Harsh, honestly, never. And I didn't think, while all the tools were there, I was familiar with remote working tools. I didn't think I would get used to an entirely new way of working after all these years of my career.
And are you enjoying it?
Some aspects, definitely. Now one has settled down into this way of life and knows a trick or two. For example, over the last couple of months, I have learned a tad more about my own team members because I'm now interacting with my colleagues in their home setting. Seeing their homes reveals a side of them, and once in a while their family members would also barge into the frame. A personality that people leave back at home when they come to work now sneaks into the workspace, and that I've started liking it. I get to know my colleagues a little better. And obviously the commute, the crawling through the Mumbai traffic commute part of it, the absence of it, I really enjoy all the time. That combined with hot meals for each meal, homemade meals, that makes this change a lot more bearable.
Oh, I wish I was there to enjoy ghar ka khana as well. But I can definitely empathize with the joy of not having a commute. Can you believe that it has been more than 4 months now since I got on the subway here in New York, and I'm almost nostalgic for the train. But, in some ways, I think I was a little better prepared for this sudden change than you were. Even before the pandemic, many offices here in New York gave their employees some level of flexibility when it came to working from home. My office, for example, left the decision up to managers who would ensure that as long as the quality and timeliness of the work didn't suffer, their teams would have the opportunity to work from home. And as a millennial, I'm used to online meetings, Skype calls, using all of the various digital tools needed to manage a team, often working in multiple locations. But of course, this has all gone into overdrive ever since everybody was forced to work from home. So let's dig into that a little bit and take our cross-generational view of some of these changes that we're seeing in working culture. I want to approach it from 2 points of view. Firstly, how should an older generation of business leaders deal with some of these challenges that are thrown up by the new work from home regime? And secondly, and perhaps inversely, what can the younger generation, like Gen Z perhaps, who are the youngest professionals in our workplaces, what can they teach all of us about adapting to this new work culture? Now, roughly speaking, I fall somewhere between your generation and Gen Z. So I want to be well prepared. If I want to be well prepared to lead the corporations of tomorrow, me and my peers, we will have to learn from both you and from Gen Z. So you already mentioned the lack of a commute as one benefit of working from home, but I'm sure there are some drawbacks also, right?
Harsh, in my view, there are many limitations of a work culture where uh, everyone interacts in two dimensions and everyone is reduced to the same size of tile. Uh, uh, there is no hierarchy, it's flattening. That to me is a minor part of it. But I have made some of my best friends at work, and some of them are with us in today's chat. I believe that the best ideas emerge when you spend low quality time with high quality people. When when that unstructured interaction, that water cooler chat, that lunch outing, or the other non-work type of interactions happen, uh, and we have smart and insightful people around us, uh, work magic happens there. We've almost completely lost, or we need to find new ways of doing this type of interaction in our remote working ways now.
But as the office is forced to change, as we are forced to change, maybe the process through which some of these ideas emerge will also change, right?
Yeah, they will, perhaps, and they should. But so far, what I've seen, any attempt to recreate those informal gatherings in an online setting, the happy hour over the Zoom calls, for example, haven't quite worked. Uh, I can sense an exhaustion with the medium, and I think it has to do with the complete disappearance of that spontaneous, unplanned interaction I spoke about. You need time and a break from work to do your work very well. I think that's the smart balance I miss at times.
Papa, I completely agree with you about the Zoom happy hours. I think at this point we can say that they've been a universal disaster. All my friends and colleagues dread them now because they feel like a forced HR event. Um, in my peers, we've had a little more success with playing games online, for example. It's much more interactive and people don't feel forced to make small talk or socialize. But you're right, we haven't found a replacement for those spontaneous hangouts in our new virtual work from home context. So I would love to know what our audience thinks about our topic today. And just from a broader point of view, do you believe that one generation may have an advantage over another when it comes to a virtual work environment, whether it be through expertise, through knowledge, or so on? And if so, why? So, Papa, to go back to your point, I have a slight pushback on that. I see so many large companies here in the US, especially, who have mandated working from home until the end of the year, if not beyond that. So clearly they feel that the loss of this low quality time that you spoke about isn't that serious. I'm sure they've done the cost benefit analysis on this, and they've decided that if productivity can be maintained for most office functions, I don't see why the entire office can't be moved into a permanent remote working format, right?
I don't think so. That's a very simplistic approach. And what most people are deciding right now, they don't have a choice. Do we have a choice? We don't. The situation is such. So this has to unravel a little more for all of us. Uh, as for me, I find that a lot of what I learn about my team is often from non-verbal cues. I have trained myself to observe them. I can often tell in a meeting that someone is eager to contribute, but is a little apprehensive about speaking up. It's important. As you gain experience, Harsh, you will also realize how important reading body language can be to the work environment. Younger professional like you may think that your digital savviness gives you a leg up in the virtual workplace, but what you may not realize that you are missing out on a ton of the smaller, unnoticed aspects of a workplace.
Yeah.
Uh, some of these are important for even shaping your career, so watch out, keep your antenna up for that. I've often seen very bright young colleagues of mine uh, who need that little prod from a leader uh, to speak up and contribute. Such a person will never raise a virtual hand uh, and in a virtual meeting, and that bright person, uh, his or her colleagues and the entire business will lose out in the process, I feel.
I guess I never looked at it that way. Maybe because my generation is so comfortable communicating through devices, whether it be video, chat, email, text messages, snaps, whatever it may be, that we don't feel like we are compromising any aspect of communication. But if working from home is going to affect my chances of getting promoted, I think I need to be a little bit more worried now. But yeah, you mentioned tech savviness. I think dependence on tech in the workplace perhaps puts a younger generation at an advantage. If all your work is happening through your device, then your efficiency is dependent upon how good you are at multitasking or even navigating software. Something I'm thinking about, something as simple as managing Zoom, Excel, PowerPoint, email within the same workflow without feeling overwhelmed. And in that situation, digital natives may have an upper hand. It makes me think of my MBA class where we had students from across the age spectrum because it was an evening class for working professionals. And on group assignments, which we often did over online meetings, younger students just worked a lot faster. Uh, you yourself are fairly tech savvy, but do you ever feel like technology can become a barrier for your generation?
Yes, but I think, Harsh, this is only natural. As you get older, it takes more effort to learn new things. But if you have the curiosity and the patience, it's a barrier you can overcome. I had mentioned to you about my fumbling attempts, and now I can share it with everyone on the chat now. Fumbling attempts with PlayStation and PS4, and here is the new toy and the new controller that that I'm having fun with now. While it has got nothing to do with my work, it's not related to my work at all. I'm curious to see how youngsters are using gaming and the play with these consoles to interact and communicate. Uh, but only by entering the world myself in my own little way can I begin to understand this mode of communication. It's fun, but it's scary as well.
So what I'm actually hearing is that you and I are going to be playing FIFA together very soon, right?
Well, it's going to be a while, Harsh. I don't think I'm going to get to the level of being able to play with you. But why not? Someday, for sure.
I can't wait. I look forward to that day. We're getting so many great comments from our audience to our last question. People are talking about whether introverts might have embraced work from home better than extroverts. People really related to your point about body language and non-verbal cues, and are also wondering what happens to so-called high-touch roles or jobs where you really need that face-to-face, in-person interface. These are really fascinating questions and points of view to consider. I'd love to pose another question to our audience. We are talking about tech and digital tools. So is there a tool that has made working from home easier for you? So please share your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, there are the usual suspects like Zoom, but I would love to know some of the other tools and softwares that have made your life just a little bit easier in a time like this. So, Papa, to move on to the second part of our discussion, what lessons can we learn from our youngest generation, Gen Z, when it comes to working from home? This question came to my mind because I had this eye-opening moment recently, and I wrote about it in my column as well. We had an HR-led initiative, a weekly happy hour, as you can imagine, which was well-intentioned but failing. And you can see why, right? If you try to force those low-quality time moments that, as you described them, and turn them into scheduled events, they sort of lose their effect. They lose their charm. To fix this, a younger colleague of mine, he took the initiative and he turned the happy hour into a gaming night. Now instead of being forced to make polite conversations with floating heads on yet another Zoom meeting, we were playing games with each other. And we found that to be so much more interactive and, more importantly, just so much more relaxed. And it made me think about how maybe a generation that has grown up with the internet is so well prepared to move into a virtual workplace, because I think that they instinctively understand what it means to connect with people virtually.
What a coincidence. Only, I think it was yesterday that I had a similar instance which made your point alive for me. Yeah, it was yesterday that I wanted to get the Google Analytics dashboard for GeoMart set up on my computer. A couple of tries of trying to do it myself, and then I called this smart chap in my office called Anay Agarwal, and I sought help from him. And I tried, and then a little exasperated, he said, "Sir, why don't you just give me access to your desktop?" And he took charge of my PC and started working on it. And I noticed on the side, while he was talking to me and doing things on my system, sitting from home, on the side he called in a young person called Shweta from the analytics team. And there was a chat window that was open wherein he was interacting with her, and both of them together in minutes sorted everything out. After the event, out of curiosity, I asked Anay if Shweta was his friend, considering how quickly she responded and was very, very willing to jump in and help him out. You know what he told me? He said he had never met Shweta at work or otherwise in life, but both of them are part of this group that plays a video game together online on weekday evenings. Do you know something that's called Call of Duty? I think that's what he mentioned.
Oh yeah, of course. Warzone, it's a very popular multiplayer game.
Yeah, and I thought to myself, friends who have never met in real life are playing together and therefore working together better. That's a new realization to me. It was a lesson that my younger colleague showed me on a peep into how working relationships are going to be shaped. But the interaction also made me feel a little sheepish of my role in this new social dynamic. And I thought to myself, should I feel like the boss who can summon the Anays and the Shwetas and who will do things for them in a jiffy to execute everything that I wish and a task? Or do I feel like my grandma? My grandma, she needed help with translating anything that she saw in English, from English to Hindi. So I wondered whether was I powerful or was I illiterate? I still don't know.
It's so interesting. And I think it's so revealing about how we can develop a new perspective just by seeing a younger generation at work.
Yeah, but what I do know is when so many old ways and methods of being together and working have changed, youngsters have a distinct advantage. They have a starting advantage. And I recently shared this with a group of students of an IIM who were just joining the new program. And I was there at their orientation program, and I realized that they had heard from a large number. I was the last person in the day to speak, and they had heard from a lot of people who had told them, how to deal with uncertainty, crisis, how to cope, gyan, and VUCA world, and all that was done to them. And I stepped up and I said, I have a different approach. You guys who are young professionals, some of who with work experience, some of with who just finished their graduation, should actually be more confident, because I'm the one who is scared here with this change. This uncertainty has actually turned the world not into a level playing field. It has tilted the world in favor of the younger people. And that is a reality. The generation that understands how to build and maintain relationships virtually and work remotely, but effectively, will not merely participate in the new look workplace, but I think they will define it. And I'm navigating remote working in my pivot mode and in the coping with crisis mode.
Yeah.
And the youngest members of my team who have less responsibility and more relevant knowledge, I think they should see it as a golden opportunity. So I told the students that see, so many things are different. For me, stories are what you tell others. It's what you tell the next generation. Stories go out into the universe and last forever. But for you, stories last only for 24 hours, and then they vanish on Instagram. The meanings are changing.
Yeah, it reminds me of what you said in your audiogram reaction to my column, that for you, hangouts and meets are still verbs, but for a younger generation, these are now nouns. These are the names of the products that help bring us closer together and work together. So yeah, I think we're still in the early days of defining what this new virtual workplace culture will look like. But like so many things, I think this pandemic has just fast forwarded a lot of the changes that were already taking place. So I agree with you that maybe this is the time for leaders to fast track the ideas of their younger team members. You said to me that everybody's dashboards are broken, and you're right. In this time, there is no textbook that can guide us out of this situation. But as a millennial, I see the Gen Z experience on social media, for example, as a very strong indicator of how a younger generation can redefine older practices. My generation, millennials, built social media on the promise of bringing the world closer together. But I think over time, as these social platforms had to monetize and started chasing the dollars, they allowed advertising to take over the networks to such an extent that initial promise got lost somewhere along the way. In my own work 7 or 8 years ago, I was helping my clients grow their audiences organically. If you remember, we were always trying to make things go viral. And now anything to do with social media works almost completely like managing an ad campaign.
Let me say this, Harsh. I'm impressed that it's very profound that you actually make a distinction between the generation that built social media, which is your generation, and the generation now, and you're already seeing the technology differences and how behaviors will change. It makes me think, which is good. Coming back to our topic, therefore, even for a show like this, I completely agree with you. Even for a simple show like this, it is now very common to have an advertising support in order to get to a larger audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything I've learned from you, it is that if you're just a little bit self-aware, and accept the fact that it's okay, you get older, and open yourself to ideas from a younger generation, I think all of us benefit in the process. But yes, I do believe that Gen Z is bringing that social aspect back into our networks. Maybe it's too idealistic of me, but it's encouraging. I see how they share within private groups of friends as opposed to broadcasting to a larger audience. They're more easygoing online, comfortable with being themselves, without filters, without editing. For my generation, and I'm painting with broad strokes here, but the real me and the online me were two different people. But for Gen Z, there is no separation between online and offline.
And because of what we are in and this whole work from home, now none of us have that separation between online and offline.
Yeah,
that's a very good insight, and it's only wise to learn from those who have always been comfortable with an environment that may be new to some of us. Very, very good point.
I think, which is why I think that Gen Z is primed to lead these new shifts in work culture. And between the two of us, while you're doing that by learning the PS4, I'm doing it by being a little more comfortable with sharing unedited and unfiltered photos and videos of me online, and videos of me doing maybe goofy things on TikTok. So I'm really, by the way, I'm really enjoying seeing some of the comments from our audience. I think this topic has really resonated with a lot of people. They are sharing some of their unique experiences online. People are talking about how after many days of Zoom and video calls, they've now shifted to going to maybe just using audio calls. Lots of examples of tools and softwares that are helping people. Papa, you'll be happy to see that GeoMeet seems to be very popular amongst many a number in our audience. So I think this is a time that we can pause and maybe take some more questions from our audience. So I'd like to invite IG back, and so that we can answer some questions.
Thanks, Harsh. Been enjoying the conversation. It's been fascinating. And yes, I agree. The chat box is ablaze with comments. And I'll pick a few to start with. First of all, with Sangeeta Malia. And she's asking, what's your take on introverts versus extroverts? And it's not necessarily about young versus old. What she says she's observing is that introverts are more happy online than in a physical meeting. Damodar, Harsh, one of you want to take a stab at that?
I think it's a really interesting perspective, and I, on some level, I can empathize with the fact that I often feel at ease communicating online than sometimes in person. But as Papa mentioned, I think in such a situation when everyone is working virtually, the good managers, the good leaders will be able to identify those introverts on their team and perhaps prompt them, even virtually, to speak up.
Yeah, I would say at starting point in business, you may be introvert or extrovert. But if you have to make a difference, and if you have to dent the universe, you will need to step up. And you will need to step up to express and influence other people's thought. That to me is a requirement for success. And as Harsh said, sometimes people do it themselves, and more often than not, it is learned behavior. I started off as an introvert. It is learned behavior. Some of us are lucky; we get good mentors and good friends who poke us to express. But real world or virtual world, that path has to be traveled for everyone, I think.
Sure, but Damodar, I guess this question is meant for you as well. Arvind Subramaniam asked, saying that I also miss the energy in the office place, which is a very important part of our non-verbal cue. You can see it flash on your screen. to sense the mood, right? I think you talked about it, the buzz around a new product launch or the stress building up. So, and this whole thing that I know you're neck deep in work these days.
Yes.
A lot of people come. Would you like to kind of respond to Arvind's comment?
I think so, but I would also like to say that it is because that's the toolkit I know. That's the cover drive for which I don't have to think. It's become part of muscle memory. Therefore, I'm faster. I'm better off in that real world environment. But if I wear the productivity lens that Harsh alluded to, then high productivity, let's say a productivity index of 6 with 10 people, or the productivity index of 2 with 300 people that I can collaborate with today. The end result, there is nothing to choose from. I think it's just that we are used to a certain way of playing. We are used to the test matches, and somebody has turned them into day-night matches and turned the ball colorful, etc. I think we need to just learn, and some new players will come and shine. That's the way I look at it.
Papa, I think you're really missing cricket, huh?
Yes, I am. I'm looking forward to IPL. Yeah.
Harsh, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you were to advise folks in your dad's generation, what is that one tip that you would give them?
I would say that don't let technology become a source of frustration, because your younger team members only care about your message and not how you're conveying it. Everyone is extremely tolerant of any tech glitches and mishaps, but as long as our leaders who we are looking to for direction, you stay on message and don't allow some of those tech jam ups to overwhelm you or frustrate you, I think we can continue to work together very productively.
Thank you. Damodar, what would you advise folks in Harsh's generation?
Well, I would say enjoy the advantage. Enjoy the way the world has tilted in your favor. Be more confident that it has, but don't get carried away. For success, you're not going to be competing with your previous generation. For success, you're going to be competing with your own peer group who are equally technology savvy. And therefore, what is looking like a contrast today is going to be commoditized when you actually rise up, because everyone will come from the same place. And then again, the reason why people win, the reason why leaders lead, and the reason why influencers influence come back to the same thing. Do you have the cognitive ability? Do you have the social ability to take people with you? Do you have the aptitude to and the instincts of a leader? Those things, I think, the human emotions and the dynamics, they remain the same. I often say, in different contexts, I often say, technology is like a good shoe to wear. It makes you comfortable. It makes you go far. It makes you reach new places, but it doesn't decide where you're going.
Lovely.
And you never get carried away. However good and expensive the shoe is, you never wear it on your head. Yeah, so that's what I would say to youngsters like Harsh. Harsh, there you are.
That's a very funny image. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of acutely conscious of the time, and we've got some many questions that need exploration. And like we'd promised, we will continue this conversation on Slack. So keep those questions coming in there. I think Damodar and Harsh will be happy to continue this conversation there. But having said that, I'm not going to let Harsh you go without asking you, what's the theme for the next episode of TAMG?
I was expecting that. Sure, I can give you a little teaser. On the next episode, we will talk about entertainment, more specifically about media consumption habits and how they've been changing, both before and especially during the pandemic. And I think my father's adventures with the PlayStation may get another mention there.
Wow. Great. So thank you, Harsh and Damodar. Please remember to watch out for Harsh's column on how the pandemic, as he mentioned, has changed our notions of entertainment next week on Wednesday, I think July 29th. And then that will be followed by a weekly show on Saturday at 7:30, the same time, 7:30 India time on August 1st. So, and as I'd mentioned as well, this conversation will continue on our Slack channel. So make sure you join us there and keep the questions and comments coming in on Slack. And as I'd mentioned at the start of the show, I have some news to share. After Harsh and Damodar complete their third episode on August 1st, we will then invite a new set of special guests. On August 8th, Santosh Desai, well-known columnist and brand consultant, will be joined by his daughter, Pallavi Desai, who took the plunge into entrepreneurship a month before COVID struck. She's the co-founder at Creatures of Habit, a new back-to-basics apparel brand. We'll share more details of their conversation over the next few days, so stay tuned. It promises to be special. In the meantime, we look forward to having you back next week. Thank you for joining and have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.